Alright y'all, I'm going to make a quick update video on the truck here. If you're not familiar with the project, this is originally a 94 2500 Chevy 6.5 diesel. As you can see on the decal, I always show that in my videos. I've swapped in a 1984 454 big block into it, converted from diesel to gas. I want to make a video on the coolant system again. I made one the other day. I'm going to go ahead and delete it because I made a couple of changes. It's working a little bit better now, and I wanted to kind of go through and explain things the way that the hoses are routed all throughout the tank, the radiator, and the engine. And hopefully if you just follow along, you'll kind of see where I'm coming from. Now, to begin with, this is going to seem a little bit complicated, but if you follow along, it's actually pretty simple. And so basically, before I get started, I was having problems with the coolant system building up too much pressure. It was leaking out of my radiator cap, or the expansion range was so high, I could have the coolant all the way at the bottom here, and it would expand all the way up here and leak out the vent tube. I had that vented to atmosphere, or it would leak out of this. It was leaking all over. It was too much pressure. I'm not going to go too far into details with what the problems were. I'm just going to kind of try to jump in and explain how I have it set up, and just kind of walk you through where the coolant is flowing where, and we'll just kind of move on from there. So to begin with, we'll start at the engine with the intake. Up here on the top of the intake, there's a 5/8 hose coming out of here. It flows out through this hose and into the heater core down there under this electrical stuff here on the left side. Goes through the heater core, up it and out to the right side, which is a 3/4 hose, and that pushes coolant out this way, and it connects to this T that I have right here. Now sometimes it'll just go straight to the water pump, which is one side does go to the water pump, and I've got this T right here. Sometimes it goes straight to the radiator, the top of the radiator right here. There's like a little nipple fitting built in. Now I've got it split off right there, and the reason I did that is because I wanted some way of bypassing the thermostat to the radiator in a small head. It's only a 3/4 hose. It's not going to be that much coolant flowing through it. But basically, any air bubbles that are in the engine while you're first starting up will go through that, come out here, and go up into here. And then the steam, while it's hot, or the air bubbles or anything coming out of this hose right here, is going to go up through the steam vent, which goes to the top of this tank right here, this coolant tank. That's going to go down in there. Whether it's liquid or whether it's steam, it's going to be steam or air. It's going to push through there and put pressure into this, because this is a pressurized cap. The fluid that's in here, the air is going to expand a little bit, and it's going to push coolant up into this hose right here, and it's going to flow all the way, kind of got a little looped around it here, to the bottom of this coolant return system tank. It's kind of sunny. It goes to the bottom of this coolant return tank right here. This one goes to the bottom of that. Right now the engine is hot. I warmed it up to temperature on the thermostat in the head. I've got 2 gauges on it. I'll explain that later. That's why the level's so high. Before I did that, it was down here at the cold line. It's kind of hard to see. It's really sunny. Now it's expanded out into this. So that's where my expansion fluid is going. I also have this tank vented to atmosphere right here. So that's vented to atmosphere. So air is going to push in and out of that when it needs to. It's going to suck it when it gets cold. It's going to suck it back into this tank, and that's going to lower down. Let me go back over to the engine here. This is just a bypass for the thermostat, kind of similar to this one. It goes from the intake straight back to the water pump. And by the way, this one, with this T fitting right here, when it comes back out of the heater core, it goes up through the radiator like I already explained, and this goes back to the water pump, sucking it back into the engine while the engine is warming up before the thermostat opens. When it does get hot enough, it's about 215, 220, that opens up and flows a lot of water. This is the big, 1 3/4 inch hose, flows, or I think it's 1.5, flows to the radiator. And then you have a system that starts flowing in a circle where it goes from the engine through all these smaller hoses, through the big hose, through the radiator, and then the bottom radiator hose also has a T in it. The one at the very bottom, that big one that comes from the radiator over to the water pump. This one tees off and goes up here to the bottom of this tank right here. So I know it seems like a lot, seems kind of complicated. I absolutely had to put this in because, like I explained at the beginning of the video, if that wasn't there, I was either getting way too big of an expansion range where my coolant was just way overflowing, or it was way too much pressure. It was leaking out of here, it was leaking out of there, it was leaking different spots until I put, 2 clamps on, or I tightened them up enough or whatever. It wasn't set up right for some reason. It wasn't working the way that it should. It should be a lot simpler than this, in my opinion. It should be, and I've seen videos and I've seen posts online of people who have it way simpler. It just works out for them. For some reason, it just doesn't work for me. And I kind of just went through and explained all, this right here and this setup here. The T is what I was pointing at. This T on the return for the water pump out of the heater core. This is essential, and that was essential. And, I can walk through it one more time real quick, just in case anybody's looking for a quick answer. But basically, when you're first starting up, if there's air in the system, or really it just helps with steam. And before I really go into it again, which I'm kind of repeating myself, but on the LS engines, the Chevy engines, they have a steam line that starts somewhere. Usually it's up front. Sometimes they have, more in the back, but usually it's up front. There's 2 here, and there's a very, very small, it's like a 1/8. It's a really small steam line. Usually it's a hard line that goes from one side of the head to the other side of the head, and that blows out the steam in the air or any trapped air pockets or whatever. And that, a lot of times they have it, something drilled in the water pump where it can just circulate back or whatever, go to the radiator. This is basically doing the same thing. I'm using a little bit of a bigger hose right here, but it's doing the same thing. It's going through the heater core and then back out to this T, to the radiator, and immediately, if there's any air coming out of the engine and through this line, immediately it's going to go straight up into this steam vent line, which, like I explained before, goes back to this tank right here. And it expands and comes into here, like I've already explained. But hopefully that'll help somebody. This absolutely is working for me great. And like I said, everything I've explained, everything I've set up is working perfectly. So I'm really, really happy with it. Right now, like I said, the system is hot. This doesn't ever really expand too much or, blow hot coolant out if it's hot. I mean, if it's really hot, it might, but this is doing all the work. It's pushing everything where it should, and it's venting, like I said earlier, to atmospheric pressure, or the atmosphere. So it doesn't really, blow up if I open it while it's hot. But I was going to start it up real quick and you can actually look at it and see the water pumping through this, and you can see it down in there pumping out. It's kind of cool. Let me go ahead and start it up real quick before I ramble on for too long. And the exhaust pipe is still broken, so it's going to be real loud, but it should be all right. There's temperature here. It got a little bit cold on me. Well, it's warming up now again already, but it's like 180-ish or so. And then, so this right here is actually head temperature. I have a sensor on the head. That's direct engine temperature right there. This one is mounted to the thermostat housing, so that's thermostat temperature right there. It's kind of cool. I can monitor the temperature from 2 different locations. It helps me troubleshoot things. It lets me know exactly when the thermostat opens. Yeah, so unfortunately you couldn't really see it. I think there's too much of a glare on the camera, but this line right here just constantly pumps water. Like I said earlier, it bypasses the thermostat, just like this one, which really, I probably don't even need that one. When I think about it, I probably don't need that one, because that's what this line is doing right here. It's bypassing the thermostat, so it's putting a little bit of fresh coolant in there. It's not a lot. It's a small line compared to this one. When that thermostat opens, this really starts pumping water through the whole system. But I'm gonna leave that there for now until I can find a reason to cap it off. But yeah, like I said, hopefully that helps somebody figure it out if they're having the same problem that I was having. And I am sure, please, before you leave a comment, I am sure there's going to be somebody who says, oh, it needs to be simpler than that, it's too complicated, you don't need that extra, return system tank, you don't need that, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I have tried every single possible combination of hooking up hoses, blocking hoses off, putting the vent hose somewhere else. I have tried, trust me. I don't need you to leave a comment that says something about it needs to be simpler, blah, 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 because I've already heard it, and I've already tried it, and it has not worked. So, like I said, I'm going to start repeating myself too much now, but hopefully that helps somebody out. Leave a comment if this helped you. Heck, leave a comment if you think it should be set up differently. Just don't leave a hate comment about, how stupid this system is. Anyways, I'm going to sign off now.